We are here to discuss what is going to happen in the next 2 days. शुरुआत में मैं रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा मेरी कोलीग अनु मथाइस इकोनॉमिक एडवाइज़र और हमारे साथ मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ फाइनेंस के जॉइंट सेक्रेटरी साहब हैं. आप दोनों लोग मिलके इनपुट्स देंगे रिगार्डिंग दिस 2 days प्रेस ब्रीफिंग, दिस 2 days मीटिंग. Once you have got the inputs, the initial inputs, then the floor will be open for the question answer segment. When we will be starting the question answer segment, my request will be that whoever wants to put up a question, please raise your hands, introduce your organization, and ideally we should have one question from the print and one from the electronic so that each one of you gets covered in a balanced way. So now I'll open the floor and I'll request my colleague Anu Mathai, Economic Advisor, Ministry of Finance, to give you the basic inputs.
Good afternoon और नमस्कार आप सबको. Today we are here today over the next few days we will have a meeting of a working group of the G20, the International Financial Architecture Working Group. So ये जो G20 है इसमें है 19 देश प्लस यूरोपियन यूनियन, जो इनके मेंबर्स करीब 85% ऑफ ग्लोबल जीडीपी, over 75% of global trade और 2/3 of the world population comprise हैं इस G20 grouping में. और this grouping plays an important role in shaping and strengthening global financial architecture and governance on major international economic issues. So this group originated in response to a crisis, the Asian financial crisis. At that time when it was formed, it was a grouping of the finance ministers and central bank governors of these countries that comprise the G20. Then in 2008, when there was a global financial crisis, then it was elevated to summit level. So that means that the heads of state of these countries also began to meet every year. So the G20 presidency is now with India. So we took over from Indonesia last year, and from 1st December we assumed the presidency. You would have seen the president of Indonesia handing over the presidency of the G20 to Honorable Prime Minister Modi ji at the Bali summit last year. So from 1st December, India has the presidency of the G20 till 30th November. Now we represent the Ministry of Finance handles something called the finance track of the G20, and because there are many working groups in the G20 divided into two parts. One part is called Sherpa track, and the word Sherpa comes from the Nepali word Sherpa, who assists mountaineers in mountain climbing. So it's come just from that, because the Sherpa assists the leader of the country. So that track is handled by the Ministry of External Affairs and a number of ministries like agriculture, health, electronics and so on. Now the Ministry of Finance handles the finance track of this of the G20, and in the finance track we have 8 working groups and 8 work streams and 5 working groups. So in Chandigarh on 30th and 31st we have the first meeting of the International Financial Architecture Working Group, and as its name suggests, this International Financial Architecture Working Group it deals with the global financial architecture, and it particularly deals with how to strengthen the crisis response in times of crisis. जैसे जब पैंडेमिक हुआ था तो सबसे गरीब से गरीब देशों को किस तरह से और ज़्यादा सपोर्ट दिया जाए. And so it is basically a crisis response, and it particularly deals with how to strengthen the crisis response in times of crisis. जैसे जब पैंडेमिक हुआ था तो सबसे गरीब देशों को किस तरह से और ज़्यादा सपोर्ट दिया जाए. And so it is basically a crisis response, how to strengthen global financial architecture to respond to crisis. So each working group will have about 4 to 5 meetings throughout the year. So the meeting of the this group also will take place in different parts of India, and about 100 delegates from the G20 countries will come. There will also be representatives from invitee countries. So the presidency has can invite some more countries in addition to the member countries, so they will also be represented, and international organizations. And this meeting will be inaugurated by Honorable Minister of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare, Shri Narendra Tomarji, and Honorable Minister of Food Processing Industries, Shri Pashupati Kumar Paras. And the meetings will be steered will be conducted. This group has two co-chairs, country co-chairs, France and South Korea, who will co-chair the meeting, and along with that will be representatives of the Indian presidency from the Ministry of Finance and the Reserve Bank of India. And what this meeting will discuss over 2 days will be how to increase the stability and cohesion of India. We are also organizing side events, so that there is a little more occasion to discuss certain issues in detail. So for this meeting, there will be a side event on CBDCs, that is central bank digital currencies, opportunities and challenges. This event has been organized by Reserve Bank of India. And the idea is to share experiences on different countries, because there have been some countries have introduced these CBDCs on a pilot basis. We have done it. So there will be a seminar, there will be a side event on that. Also, the aim of the Indian presidency is to build connect with the local people. The local people should also understand what this G20 is all about, which my colleague will also speak about. And after this meeting in Chandigarh, we will have this group, the same group, International Financial Architecture Working Group, will meet again in March, June and September in other places to take forward the discussion. So ultimately, whatever is discussed will go into certain outcome documents and reports and so on that will be brought out. And finally, all this will feed into something called the Leaders' Declaration, which is issued at the level of the summit. So with this is the brief background of the International Financial Architecture Group. Thank you.
नमस्कार साथियों, जो G20 के बारे में बताने के पहले शायद आपको पता होगा, मैं चंडीगढ़ म्युनिसिपल कमिश्नर था 2015 to 17 और मैं तलाश कर रहा था कि मेरे पुराने साथियों में कोई तो दिखे, किसी का चेहरा तो दिखेगा। कुछ दिख रहे हैं, तो मुझे बाद में यही पता चला कि शायद मीडिया में भी ट्रांजिशन की स्पीड वही है जो अफसरों में है। खैर, बहुत अच्छा लगा आप सबसे मिलके आज दोबारा 5-6 साल बाद, और अगले 2-3 दिनों में हम यही हैं और G20 के दौरान उम्मीद है हमारे इंटरेक्शंस होंगे। G20 जैसा कि मेरे कलीग ने बताया, उसके बारे में बताया, उसके अंदर अलग अलग वर्क स्ट्रीम और जो वर्किंग ग्रुप्स हैं उसके बारे में बताया, उसके काम और उसके उद्देश्य क्या है उसके बारे में बताया। लेकिन G20 जैसे किसी भी बड़े इवेंट का एजेंडा सिर्फ मीटिंग नहीं होता। ऐसे किसी भी बड़े इवेंट का एजेंडा सिर्फ दुनिया के नुमाइंदों को एक जगह बुलाकर बिठाना नहीं होता, बल्कि उस देश के इतिहास की, विरासत की, खान पान की, सांस्कृतिक उपलब्धियों की, समाज की, इन तमाम का भी एक परिचय देना भी लक्ष्य होता है, ताकि जब वो यहां से जाएं तो इस देश के बारे में उनकी जानकारी बढ़े और इस देश का जो गौरवशाली इतिहास है या जो गौरवशाली परंपरा है उसके बारे में वो जानकर जाएं। तो G20 की मीटिंग्स जैसा आपको पता है पूरे साल भर चलेगी और देश के अलग अलग हिस्सों में शेड्यूल हुई है, ताकि पूरे हिंदुस्तान की, इतना बड़ा मुल्क है और इतनी इसकी विविधता है, उसकी एक जानकारी सारे जो भी लोग आते हैं इसमें पार्टिसिपेट करने अलग अलग मुल्कों से उनको मिल सके। और जब फाइनेंशियल आर्किटेक्चर पे मीटिंग वेन्यू तय करने की बात आई तो एक ही वेन्यू इसके लिए था कि फाइनेंशियल आर्किटेक्चर के लिए वेन्यू वो होना चाहिए जो आर्किटेक्चरल मार्वल हो, और द सिटी ब्यूटीफुल को छोड़कर हिंदुस्तान में ऐसा कोई वेन्यू नहीं था जो आर्किटेक्चर के लिहाज से पूरी दुनिया में अपना एक स्थान रखता है। तो ये जो एक तमगा है इस सिटी ब्यूटीफुल का, इसको हम कोशिश करेंगे कि अगले 2-3 दिनों में उनसे जो डेलीगेट्स हमारे आ रहे हैं उनका इससे परिचय कराया जाए। इसका इतिहास क्या है, इसके आसपास का जो एक हमारा उत्तर भारतीय परिवेश है उसका खान पान क्या है, उसके खान पान की विविधता क्या है, वो हम कोशिश कर रहे हैं उनको अपने जो हमने उनके लिए खास खान पान की व्यवस्था की है उसके द्वारा बतलाने की। जो यहाँ के आर्ट और कल्चरल फॉर्म हैं उसको बतलाने का प्रयास किया जा रहा है सांस्कृतिक कार्यक्रमों द्वारा। एक छोटा सा सांस्कृतिक कार्यक्रम आज भी रखा गया है, एक बड़ा सांस्कृतिक कार्यक्रम कल रखा गया है सुखना पर, तो इसके द्वारा हम बताने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं। फिर इसके बाद एक पोलो मैच जो आज चंडीगढ़ पोलो क्लब के द्वारा कराया जा रहा है उसमें उनकी शिरकत करवाई जा रही है ताकि वो इस गेम को जो हिंदुस्तान की इजाद है इस गेम को देख सकें, समझ सकें और इसका आनंद उठा सकें। कल सुखना लेक पर एक गाला इवेंट का ऑर्गेनाइज किया जा रहा है जहां पर उनको हम चंडीगढ़ की खूबसूरती का नजारा करा सकें, और चंडीगढ़ की खूबसूरती का नजारा जो सुखना से मिलता है मेरे ख्याल से आप सब उससे वाकिफ हैं। इसके अलावा अगर चंडीगढ़ हम ला रहे हैं दुनिया के तमाम लोगों को तो कोई भी विजिट रॉक गार्डन के बगैर अधूरी है, तो हम रॉक गार्डन भी इनको ले जा रहे हैं ताकि वो देख सकें। आज पूरी दुनिया में एक मूवमेंट सा चला है रिसाइकल, पूरी दुनिया में मूवमेंट है ग्रीन, पूरी दुनिया में मूवमेंट है कैसे हम रिसोर्सेज के कम इस्तेमाल से ज्यादा काम कर सकते हैं। और चंडीगढ़ का जो ये रॉक गार्डन इसका बहुत बड़ा एग्जाम्पल है, और वो तब से एग्जाम्पल है जब से ये बातें इकोनॉमिक टर्मिनोलॉजी में, डेवलपमेंट की टर्मिनोलॉजी में नहीं आई थी, तो वो दिखाने का प्रयास है। और अंत इसका हम 1 तारीख को करेंगे जो इस रीजन का विरासत है, जो हमारा गौरवशाली इतिहास है, जो हमारे त्याग की, बलिदान की याद दिलाता है, विरासत खालसा। हम विरासत खालसा इन सबको ले जाकर उसके दर्शन करवाएंगे। तो हमारी कोशिश होगी कि अगले 2 से 3 दिनों में हिंदुस्तान, खासकर उत्तर भारत जिसको हम कहते हैं, उसकी जो गौरवशाली परंपरा है उससे इनका परिचय करवाया जाए। धन्यवाद।
Thanks, dear colleagues. I think you have got a very substantial kind of insight into what is going to happen over the next 2 days. इसमें आपको फाइनेंस पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से क्या क्या मीटिंग्स होंगी वो भी आपको एक ब्रीफ मिला, और इस मीटिंग के बाद आपको एक प्रेस नोट भी मिल जाएगा जिसमें विच कंटेन्स ऑल द बेसिक डिटेल्स. नाउ आई थ्रो द फ्लोर ओपन फॉर क्वेश्चन आंसर्स फ्रॉम योर साइड. प्लीज फील फ्री टू आस्क द क्वेश्चंस. ओके, लेट अस स्टार्ट फ्रॉम दिस साइड. पहले अपना थोड़ा इंट्रोडक्शन दे दीजिए.
I am Sajin Sharma from Atprakash newspaper in Chennai. My question is, as you have raised the objective of G20, which is a wide objective apart from this financial thing. Second question is, what kind of work these nations have recently done on which issues? And apart from G20 members, which other organizations are taking part in it?
So, as I said, the G20 has many work streams and working tracks. I think your question was what other things the G20 does apart from this international financial architecture. Okay. So, under the finance track, there are 8 work streams. So, there is one which is called the Framework Working Group. This looks at the framework for growth and issues around macroeconomic issues and how to bring about strong, sustainable, balanced, inclusive growth. So this group, incidentally, this framework working group is co-chaired by India and the UK. So in the finance track, all the groups have country co-chairs. So the first one, framework working group, is co-chaired by India and UK. So from India, the co-chair is our chief economic advisor. Then this international financial architecture working group, which looks at the global financial architecture, debt relief, and so on, that it is co-chaired by France and South Korea. Then we have an infrastructure working group. It looks at issues related to financing of infrastructure, and incidentally my colleague Baldev is handling that working group, and that is co-chaired by Australia and Brazil. Then we have another group. This is called Global Partnership for Financial Inclusion, and that is co-chaired by Italy and Russia. This is a group in which we have a lot of interest because financial inclusion is something in which India has made great leaps and bounds and has made a lot of progress. So this is also another group under the finance track. Then we have a joint group of health and finance. So this is a combination of health work and finance work, and it came up in the time of the pandemic to see, basically the idea was how do we increase the coordination between finance and health so that when money is needed to quickly respond to pandemics or to prevent pandemics, then how does the world mobilize enough money? So there is that global partnership. Then there are certain areas, financial sector issues are handled in the G20 finance track, and we have tax issues also handled in the finance track. So these are the other work streams apart from what this working group in Chandigarh is doing. Then you asked about which are the other organizations apart from G20. So as I said, in the G20, also these international organizations are also invited. So the main ones among them like IMF, World Bank, OECD, then all the other multilateral development banks, then Financial Stability Board, all of them participate very actively in the G20, because the G20 does not have its own secretariat. So the presidency rotates among member countries, and the country which has the presidency does all the organizational part. The research work, the inputs all come from these international organizations who also are invited to these meetings.
Is there any proposed agenda to have a headquarters of the G20 in India?
No, actually at one time, once or twice in the history of the G20, they've talked about having a permanent secretariat in one place. But then it was decided that the whole purpose of the G20 is an informal grouping. It is not an organization. It is a grouping of countries. So it was deliberately decided not to have a permanent secretariat, and that it will rotate, and the presidency will then provide the secretariat services.
I have a question. I'm Bazin Barma from Daily Post. I have a simple question. G20 की हम बात कर रहे हैं, you told like tourism को एक boost मिलेगा, तो delegates देखेंगे सारे आके, यहाँ का जो culture है, history है, उसके बारे में पता चलेगा, financially आपने बताया, पर अगर एक layman's language की बात करें, जो एक आम इंसान है, जो ज़मीन पर है, अपना काम कर रहा है, वो G20 के पोस्टर दिख रहा है पूरे चंडीगढ़ में, लेकिन G20 आखिरकार उसके लिए क्या है, कम शब्दों में अगर इसको बयान कर सके तो किस तरीके से?
G20 जो देशों का समूह है, वो देश विश्व की करीब 60% से अधिक जनसंख्या उन देशों में रहती है। विश्व का 85% से अधिक जीडीपी उन देशों से आता है। तो वो जो फैसले G20 की बैठकों में लिए जाते हैं, जो वर्किंग ग्रुप की बैठक से काम चलेगा, वो अंततः वित्त मंत्री, सेंट्रल बैंक गवर्नर की मीटिंग तक पहुंचेगा और अल्टीमेटली वो देशों के प्रधानमंत्रियों या राष्ट्रपतियों की एक बैठक, जिसे हम लीडर समिट कहते हैं, उसमें वो फैसले लिए जाएंगे। जब वो फैसले उसमें लिए जाते हैं, उसके अनुसार ही सारी अंतर्राष्ट्रीय संस्थाएं फिर काम करना शुरू करती हैं। कुछ ऐसे फैसले होते हैं जैसे पैंडेमिक की महामारी, आपको उदाहरण देने के लिए, पैंडेमिक महामारी के दौरान जो आर्थिक संकट विश्व के कई देशों में आया था, खासकर कुछ कम आय वाले देशों में आया था, कुछ के कर्ज बढ़ गए, कुछ के फॉरेन एक्सचेंज रिजर्व इतने ज्यादा गिर गए कि उन देशों में तकलीफ होनी शुरू हो गई। वो तकलीफ वहां के नागरिक को होती है अल्टीमेटली। उसके समाधान जो किए गए कि किस प्रकार अंतर्राष्ट्रीय मौद्रिक तरलता बढ़ाई जाए, किस प्रकार अंतर्राष्ट्रीय फाइनेंशियल सिक्योरिटी और सेफ्टी इंस्टीट्यूट किए जाए, कैसे जो देश ऋण में डूबते जा रहे हैं, कैसे उन्हें उबारा जाए, कैसे उन्हें एक हाथ बढ़ाया जाए, उन्हें एक सहारा दिया जाए। तो किस व्यक्ति को क्या लाभ होगा ये तो उस देश की परिस्थिति पर निर्भर करता है, परंतु जो फैसले लिए जाते हैं वो इतने अहम हैं कि वो हर किसी के जीवन को कहीं ना कहीं छू ही जाते हैं. थैंक यू.
Hello. Hi.
Sir, I represent, I am Surinder Verma, representing Mirror 365, which is a media website as well as a YouTube channel. My simple question is, what will be the policies to be discussed for reviving the global economy? And my next question is, what policies are being framed to funding the low income economy? जो ग्लोबल इकोनॉमी है उसके लिए मतलब क्या पॉलिसी जो फ्रेम की जा रही है?
Global economy is a very wide topic, and we can share with you that G20 has such a wide range of subjects that every topic which affects global economy is discussed in G20. It can be infrastructure, it can be international liquidity, it can be strategies for growth, it can be financial inclusion, it can be financial sector strength and resilience. All these contribute in their own unique ways to strengthening the global economy, and one underlying objective of G20 and especially of finance track, which is led by Indian finance minister for this year along with RBI governor, is to ensure a strong, sustainable and inclusive and resilient growth. These are the dimensions of growth which have now been adopted by all major countries and international organizations, that the growth should be sustainable, the benefits of growth should reach everyone, and wherever there are any potential problems in global economy, it can be due to any reason. But this kind of discussions, these policy discussions, these coordination mechanisms provide a global financial safety net so that economy is in a much more resilient state than it used to be. And in fact, you will appreciate that this is the reason why economic shocks of present day are much more contained and limited than they used to be when this kind of coordination was absent. So this coordination, crisis response is at the heart of G20, and all countries coming together actually lend a great strength to the growth of global economy. Yes, low income countries, you asked about low income countries. Low income countries have their own very specific needs. Their primary need is core developmental need. So for that core developmental need, the world has a system which we call as development financing. So this development financing comes from actions of multilateral development banks, from international financial institutions, from help which other countries provide to low income countries. So this is one aspect, and G20 regularly talks about it. In fact, international financial architecture also talks about it, that how to increase and make it more effective and targeted so that these countries can benefit. And then from time to time, there is a stock taking of the problems of low income countries. For example, debt distress might be a problem in some countries. Lack of liquidity might be a problem in some countries. So these organizations and countries come together and come with specific solutions, very targeted solutions. For example, IMF may step in, and there may be policy guidance to IMF to undertake some action to help these low-income countries. And infrastructure development is also a part of discussions of G20, which is again a need of low-income countries. So overall, the needs of low-income countries and the vulnerable countries are very much on the agenda and in focus of G20 in all its work streams.
Yep. Hi, I'm Harpreet from Union Express. Like you would be discussing something like debt transparency, capital flow, and other. Can you little elaborate what all on this? What all be taken in the meeting tomorrow? All this.
Yeah. So debt is always a big part of the agenda of this this working group, the IFAW working group, and especially with the pandemic, the debt distress has got aggravated. So during the pandemic, one major step that was taken was to defer the debt repayment of the very poor countries. So that was something called the Debt Service Suspension Initiative. So that was initiated during the Saudi Arabia presidency of the G20 in 2020. Now, from that, it moved on to this common framework for debt treatment. So that was extended, And the issue, what was attempted was to how to restructure the debt of the very poor countries. Along with it, the transparency of debt is also become important. So that's also another aspect that is being looked at. So debt, and now even under the Indian presidency, debt, how to deal with debt, how to handle debt treatment in a better way. Because some of these initiatives have not worked as well as they were supposed to. So under the Indian presidency, there will be a comprehensive look at the global debt situation, and a report. The idea is to bring out a report to see what has worked, what has not worked, how it can be improved. So, so debt continues to be a major part of the agenda this year also.
Also, the CBDC, RBI has our economy, the small countries which have gone in, but mainly the RBI which is doing it. When RBI getting the other central bank on this also.
So RBI has started it on a pilot basis, and that is why there were some events in Chandigarh also. There was an event that they conducted to explain to people what it is all about. Similarly, along this meeting, they will also conduct a side event, and they will be sharing India's pilot exercise with other countries, and there will be other countries who will likewise be sharing their experiences. So everybody is on a learning phase as far as this CBDCs are concerned. So that is why G20, we are also using this G20 to encourage this kind of panel discussion, so that there's a free exchange of experiences.
I have a question. Checking one earth, one family, one future motto है. जो लोगो है वो हर कंट्री अपना रखती है, क्योंकि लास्ट टाइम का भी मैंने चेक किया, जो इंडोनेशिया का था उनका अपना था.
सब अपना रखते
तो
हैं.
ये जो फ्लावर है, जो इंडियन नेशनल फ्लावर है, कौन सा, ये क्या कंसेप्ट क्यों रखा गया ऐसे वाला, इसकी क्या खासियत है?
नहीं, देखिए, ये तो इंडिया सब कंट्री का प्रेरोगेटिव होता है कि वो अपना लोगो बना सके, और जो भी ये लोगो बनाया गया है, ये तमाम एक पूरे चर्निंग प्रोसेस के बाद देखा गया है, और इसमें हमारी सांस्कृतिक प्रतीक भी है, हमारे सभ्यता का प्रतीक भी है, और एक वसुधैव कुटुंबकम का भी प्रतीक भी है. तो ये तमाम प्रतीकों को मिलाकर बनाया जाता है.
Financial crime, cyber crime is one thing that is affecting various common people of various nations. So, will they talk about this also to prevent, how to prevent these kind of crimes?
Not in this group, but there will be not in this working group meeting, but there are other working groups in which this is also addressed. So issues relating to the financial sector are also discussed in the G20, but not in this particular working group.
Elaborate the financial architecture term in the sense that what is going to be the issue which will be at the heart of discussion.
And also, can I put an add on to that, please? Does the presidency put priorities at the developing work group level? If so, what are the priorities of India?
So I'll address the second question first. So the presidency, that the country that holds the presidency of the G20 sets the agenda, but the agenda, we cannot set a completely new agenda, because this work in the G20 takes place over successive presidencies. So a lot of the work that we do will be a continuation of issues that have been taken up by previous presidencies also. At the same time, we can bring our own presidency, does have some flexibility to bring its own perspectives on different issues. So if I talk about the priorities, and since we are here for the International Financial Architecture Working Group, some of our priorities, as I said, one is debt. Debt is a major item on the agenda. Then we have how multilateral development banks and international financial institutions can be made stronger to meet the funding needs of the challenges of the 21st century, like pandemics and climate change, because they, as my colleague said, development financing is a big issue that is handled by multilateral development banks. But at the same time, now where will the money come from? How will poor countries address the challenges they face from climate change and so on? So how to make multilateral development banks stronger to be able to meet these financing requirements. So that's another area of discussion. Then this whole thing, that global financial safety net, which is basically a term used for the network of institutions, then the lending arrangements, regional financial arrangements for increasing liquidity and for providing resources, both as a preventive measure and in times of crisis. So how can this be made stronger? So that is another area of, that is being discussed. And then there is issues like what are the implications, macroeconomic implications of central bank digital currencies. That's another issue. And then issues related to capital flows, volatility of capital flows. So these are some of the broad areas of the International Financial Architecture Working Group.
This is Munishwar from Times of India. One question is regarding this, you said the health and financial sector you will study. So can you elaborate what exactly you said referred about pandemic, because health is now a big issue. Please elaborate on that. And secondly, there was you mentioned about Sukna Lake and the gala cultural event there. So it is basically a silent zone and it comes under eco-sensitive zone. So is it okay to do such kind of events at such a place? Because we are especially referring to the city's architectural heritage.
No. Whatever we are doing, that is as per permissible activities. So it's not that anything is not permissible that is doing. So that is doubly checked by administration and everything is found which is permissible. So that goes without saying. Such a event cannot happen in any place where things are not permissible. देखो ऐसा है, so it all depends. There are fine prints. I have been municipal commissioner. I know in and out of Chandigarh. I know where what can happen, what cannot happen. ठीक है? So everything is within the umbrella of permissible things. So it's number one. And number two, I think.
Yeah, the question you asked about the joint work. Yeah. So when the pandemic happened, then one problem is it was hit the world at a scale that was unprecedented. So the amount of resources, the money needed to deal with these challenges, people realized that we don't have a good system in place. So we have a good health system, we have a good financial system globally, but how to get these two to work together so that when the crisis, even before the crisis, some health crisis hits, we should be in a position, we should have the resources, we should be prepared, we should be able to prevent it, we should be prepared for it, and we should be able to respond to it. And so it was decided that we will have a joint meetings of the finance and health sectors, because normally the health is dealt with by the health, there's another health working group, which is a separate working group which does not come under the finance track. But then it was decided that coordination is required, and that is why this coordinated work was started. And in fact, as a result of this joint work, now there is a dedicated fund in the World Bank, and it is called the Pandemic Fund, and it is to be used for prevention, preparedness and response. And the idea is that that was not only for this pandemic, but because people say that there will be, it's only a matter of when there will be future pandemics. So how to be prepared for that? So that is the purpose for this joint work. Thanks.
Any spatial working groups on this North-South divide? During pandemic also we saw that there is a lack of coordination between the global South and global North.
Yeah, so this is meant to deal with all that.
Generally, we take lot of issues, and let me give you the idea of how G20 works. So G20 is a consensus based instrument. So everything which we discuss in various working groups or working streams, we have to build a consensus on that. And it's not only us, any presidency which takes that work, they have to build a consensus. And there are then different layers of how policy starts from the lower level of working groups and working streams, and then it goes up, and after working groups then there are financial minister groups, and then after finance minister group it goes to leader summit. So it's a whole churning process through which policy elements get properly discussed, shared, debated, and then countries are coming to a conclusive set of policy parameters which they all agree to. So it goes like that. And it's full year event. So it's not just one event here, but it's a collection of events for entire year.
मेरा नाम बलवान चंद्रपाल है, मैं दैनिक जागरण न्यूज़पेपर से हूँ। चंडीगढ़ में यहाँ मीटिंग हो रही है और आर्किटेक्चर घर को फाइनेंशियल आर्किटेक्चर की बात है। मेरा पहला सवाल ये है कि जो चंडीगढ़ का आर्किटेक्चर बहुत सारा जो वर्क है और आइटम्स हैं जो उनके जो कड़ी उन्होंने डिजाइन वो यहाँ से स्मगलिंग से या और भी जो मोड है उनसे विदेश जो ऑप्शन है चाहे वो कांच का हो चाहे वो इंडियन का हो सब जगह जाता है। हर महीने या हर मतलब वीकेंड में ये इस तरह की जो हर मंथ इस तरह की ऑप्शन होती है। वो सारी कंट्रीज इस तरह भारत में होंगी और चंडीगढ़ में होंगी, क्या हम वो इश्यूज उसके सामने उठा सकते हैं या उसके बारे में कुछ ऐसा हो सकता है?
देखिए, मुद्दों का अलगाव रखिए, ये किसी और का मुद्दा है, वहां पे डिस्कस करिएगा। लेट अस डिस्कस G20.
Okay, friends, I think it has been a very healthy discussion. We really got some very good questions, very insightful questions. One piece of information that tomorrow morning again we will have a 9:30 press conference here itself, जहां हमारे दोनों मंत्री साहब जो सवेरे के इनॉग्रेशन प्रोग्राम में होंगे वो यहाँ पर होंगे और मुझे लगता है कि आप उनसे फिर और भी काफी कुछ जानकारी प्राप्त कर सकते हैं. सेम passes that have been issued today will be applicable tomorrow. So please be here at 9:30 tomorrow morning after the inaugural session. Inaugural session में तो सिर्फ you people will be interacted with here only. So once again, thanks. It was a very good, wonderful thing. We'll be getting a press release short.
One little clarification. Did you say both ministers will jointly inaugurate the document?
Thank you.